Then let's discuss the thread. The dimensions of this thread, I've included a reference value in the drawing.
Next, we can fold and iron it this way, this side of the opening.
We leave a 5mm seam allowance.
We can draw this seam line.
That is the side that is folded over. The distance to this seam line,
this will be once we finish it.
A size that has the collar exposed. First, let's discuss the issue of shifting the
All
material
bottom edge
sheet
styles
upwards.
should leave 1 centimeter.
Next, the design at the sheet opening should leave 1 centimeter. The other positions should typically leave 5mm. First, we will fold the bottom edge of the sleeve inward along the sewing line.
You can also mark the sewing line for this bottom edge on the front.
Folding it this way will make it more accurate. Secure the line on the front. Once both sides of the sleeves are done, it will look like this.
Then we turn it over.
If there are too many excess seams here, you can trim a bit, leave a 3mm seam allowance.
Then we fold the upper part at this point.
Find its center point.
Make a mark. Mark on the back side.
After making the mark, set it aside for now. Next, we take out the front and back Align them face to face. The location of the pointed seam. After sewing, we spread the stitches at the pointed seam to both sides. You can use an iron to smooth this area.
Next, we add a stitch at the neckline.
After the thread is aligned with the pressed seam, we will position the opening towards the stitching at the neckline. Then, we will take out the stitches along this line on the thread. When removing the stitches, we should pay attention to this first 1 centimeter of stitching at the opening of the back piece below.
We should not stretch the thread.
Here I have drawn the stitch line again. It is consistent with the stitch line at this position because we will eventually fold and stitch this position inward.
If you have stretched the threads above significantly,
then the area of the threads above will shrink inward a bit.
Uneven.
Cut off the first centimeter part.
We will start stretching the threads again.
While stretching the threads, follow the curve to unpick the stitches to the position where the stitching is done.
Be sure to check if the seam is splitting to both sides.
Continue to withdraw to the last centimeter.
Then we will loosen this thread and complete it flat. At this moment, the seam is to the left.
Then we will draw a marking line above it.
Because the front area is
relatively
thick,
we can fold a piece of fabric for it
to align it roughly with the front position.
Then, after lifting the corner this way,
then move it forward.
After completing, if you find the seam at the neckline, if it's too wide, you can also do a little trimming. Then we will attach the sleeves.
We have marked the center point of the sleeves earlier.
Especially when working with knit fabric. It's easy to stretch the fabric when we take off the sleeves. This could result in the sleeve not fitting properly.
So we make a mark at the center.
We align the points while removing the seam. If we accidentally stretch the upper fabric, it has become relatively long. At this point, you can also pull some of the fabric underneath. Ensure the marking point above is perfectly aligned with the pointed seam below. Then we will adjust as we withdraw along the curve. After withdrawing, if the stitching here seems too wide, it can also be trimmed. Not trimming is also fine.
This depends on personal preference.
Use the same method.
Get the other side sleeve ready.
Then we place the front and back fabric pieces facing each other. Sew the side seams and the corresponding positions of the sleeves. Sew the other side and sleeves at the same positions. After sewing, make a few notches at the underarm positions on both sides. Then we turn the clothing to the front side. Here we need to fold the bottom edges of the front and back inward along the seam line to create an edge. It looks like this after folding. Here I folded a 5mm line at the bottom edge. Then let's handle the two side edges.
The seams on both sides are the same. Fold it inward, then sew a 5mm edge.
After it's done, it looks like this.
Then we work on the back.
Sew on the Velcro or sew on the hidden button.
Our top is now complete.
Here, let's take a look at the fabric portion of the pants. The two above are the front pieces. The two below are the back pieces, also reflecting for the front piece. Note that this is the location of the pocket. We can make a mark at the location of the pocket because it resembles the position at the front. I'm worried you might not be able to distinguish. Just leave a 5mm margin for all designs. Next is the fabric of this pocket. The pocket fabric is the same as that used for the front and back of the pants. This can also be flipped from left to right. Then there's the lining of this pocket. I used a thin cotton fabric for the pocket lining. This part can also be flipped from left to right. Additionally, this is the position of our pocket lining. We have a marking point at the top.
This marking point is quite close to the waistband.
This position on the fabric that we refer to. Let's also make a marking point. This will help us distinguish which side is the waistband. Because you keep flipping this piece of material back and forth. It is somewhat similar. Later, when we sew it with the pants fabric, this is the marked location. It aligns with the position at the very top. Because if you take a look, we turn it a bit like this.
This direction is somewhat similar.
It's easy to sew this position together. Finally, this part is the waistband. It's also normal to leave a 5mm seam. All designs are standard at 5mm.
Then let's make the pocket.
First, take out the front piece of the pants and the pocket lining.
One front piece and one pocket lining.
This way, the front sides are facing this side to create a seam.
After measuring, use pinking shears to trim the design. Unfold this area.
Then align the inside and outside reverse sides together.
Smooth the edges.
Sew a visible line to secure this position.
This is how it looks after measuring.
Then we take out the outer part of the pocket. There are two marked points on the outer part.
We draw it on the front of the pocket's outer part.
Then we take the part of the pants piece we prepared earlier.
Align it directly.
Align the upper edge with this marker point. Align the lower edge with this marker point over here.
Now we are at the aligned position.
Adjust it by 1 or 2 frames. Just fix it about 2 to 3mm inward from the edge of the fabric.
After fixing, it looks like this.
Here and here. Then we will lift this pant piece and set it aside. The inner lining of this pocket and the pocket section.
This curved edge can be aligned.
Sew along the guideline to fix this position in place.
This is how it looks after measuring.
Pull it from here to there. Then we lay the pant piece down like this. Here it forms the position for a pocket. Next, we will handle this section on the other side. Handle it in the same way as well.
Create this pocket.
After processing the two in front, it looks like this. Here we take out 2 back pieces and position the front piece facing them. We need to sew along this position on the side.
After sewing, we will lay out the front and back pieces.
The seam at the bottom is directed toward the back piece. Sew a visible line on the front to
After
secure
processing the front and back pieces in the same manner, it looks like this.
Then we fold the pant legs on both sides along the stitching line. Finish the edges with a seam. You can use an iron to press this side first. The procedure is the same on both sides.
The stitching here is about 3 millimeters from the edge.
Then we will place the two pieces with their fronts facing each other.
Sew along the line for both the front and back.
Be careful while sewing.
If you think the pocket stitching is too close and affects your sewing,
You can trim it slightly. After completing the sewing, make 2 cuts at the curved positions. Then we will turn it to the right side.
The sewing locations should be spread apart to both sides. Here we take out the waistband, fold one side along the seam line to the reverse side.
press this side with an iron.
Create a crease with the
After
iron.
pressing it well,
First, unfold this folded section. The two short edges should be facing each other.
We will sew along the edge at this 5 millimeter seam
after
line.
folding,
We will spread this seam to both sides.
fold the creased edge again. Then take out the pants piece we prepared earlier.
First, turn it inside out.
Then place the folded waistband over it.
The front of the waistband should align with the back of the pants piece.
The position above does not have a fold on this edge.
The edge with a fold is below.
We will align the edge without a fold with the waist position of the pants piece.
Sew directly along the upper and lower style
Pay
lines.
attention
to one issue while sewing.
Our pants waistband features a specific style.
This style corresponds with the position of the back of the pants. This position on the back of the pants is the pocketless side, right? Doesn't this position also have a particular style? Let's slightly diverge these two styles,
Because if they are combined,
it might end up being
approximately
a little
1
thick.
centimeter apart. Then just align the position and sew along the lines.
After sewing, this is how the pants piece and waistband should be displayed.
If everything is confirmed to be okay, we will make a slight trim to the style of the seam we just stitched. Just leave a margin of 2 to 3
Once
millimeters.
the trimming is
we will
complete,
unfold this pant piece and waistband again in this manner. This edge of the waistband
We have pressed in the crease at the front. Restore this crease a bit.
Then fold the crease down a bit. It will just cover the seam at the waist.
Then we sew a clear line all around the waist.
Fix this position.
You can also take out a needle or clip first. First, secure these positions.
When sewing the line,
I will flip it in here.
This way, my car will be easier to handle.
this is what the car looks like after it's fixed.
Then we arrive at this position at the very bottom. Spread the style from this side outwards. Join the two pant pieces. Sew a seam 5 millimeters along this position.
After measuring, slightly trim the seam allowance.
Then make a few notches at the center. Then turn the pants right side out and smooth them out.
Make it
Here we take a look at this colorful part of the vest. The outer layer does not need to be
After
spliced.
cutting,
There are 4 parts like this in the
The
acacia
pictures you
item.
received, I have this spot that needs to be cut.
Drew a small pair of scissors. These 4 parts all have a normal design plus a 5
we will
millimeter
take
addition.
these
3 colored pieces.
Flip them to the side to make a mark.
Take out the colored piece we have in hand.
Align it to this position.
Pay attention to this rhythm below. Now it's facing upwards.
Let's mark the positions of these 2 markers.
Then take out this colored panel from the other side. Mark the positions of the 2 markers above here. Also mark them out.
Then at the collar of the vest,
it specifies a pocket flap of several centimeters by several centimeters. Cut directly according to these dimensions. No need to add any extra flare. Next, we have this pocket fabric and the edge of these all follow the standard style with an additional 5 millimeters.
Mark the position of the line above.
Also, this is the pocket flap. Speaking of pocket flaps, I have a leftover piece of scrap material here. Let's fold it in half. The side that's folded in is the front of the fabric, while the side facing up is the back. Lift the folded horizontal part. Draw the lines for the other 3 edges. After outlining, you can set this part aside for now. Here we will first handle this strap section. Here, we will first fold it in half. The side that is folded in is the back side of the fabric. The side facing up is Iron the folded position lightly. After pressing it down, unfold it, positioning the crease in the middle. The edges of the fabric on both sides fold towards the middle. Fold it like this, and press it down again.
Then fold both sides in half.
Finally, iron it one last time. Once it has been ironed.
First, unfold one side like this.
It now has 3 crease marks on the top. Start by folding back the crease closest to the right side. Then from top to bottom,
fold it down 5 millimeters like this overall. Use a heat tool to shape it a little.
Then we'll take this crease in the middle.
Fold it over to the right side like this.
After folding, take a look. We have an extra piece here. Just stuff this extra piece into this position.
This position is small.
It's hard to handle by hand.
Let's use
tweezers for assistance. Try to arrange it more naturally and neatly. Then we use a heat tool to shape this position using heat.
Finally, we begin sewing from the unprocessed side.
This side of the car features an opening. You can just bring the entire group of cars back. It has been processed successfully. This is what the strap looks like. This position at the top. I adjusted the edge that has the fold
and this position at the bottom is open with no folds.
Then take out our buckle.
This side also has no finished edge, like this in the video.
Thread one side of the snap button like this.
After measuring, it's the edge of the bag.
The button is positioned about 3 centimeters.
We will cut it off.
It's right at this position now. It's about 3 centimeters long. Next, we use the remaining part. Continue to thread the other half of this button. Also, start threading with the unhemmed side.
After threading it in the same way as shown in the video,
it is now at this end of the upper layer.
It is what we just folded. This end has the edges neatly tucked. The end I'm holding with my right hand is the one without the edges tucked. Then we start from the end with the edges tucked. Approximately measure about 3 centimeters. We will place a marker at this position. A button is attached here. Here, I will measure it roughly. If you want to be more precise, you can take off this button first before measuring.
Then remove the button from the other side.
The edge of this button,
make a mark about 1 centimeter to the left here.
Once the marks on both sides are done, here we will splice the surface fabric. First, we will handle these 3 parts, because when we join them together here, we also need to include this strap. First, flip the fabric to have the front side facing statement on the right side.
Sew this strap on directly like this. While sewing,
you need to pay attention to this layer beneath, the edge of this bottom layer.
We have not been assimilated.
The exposed part on this side above has been incorporated. Just drive along the position marked in front of us. When driving, we should tilt at a slight angle because the heights of the positions on both sides are different. The location on this side,
we should tilt it a little like this.
Because if this button is positioned too closely, it may be hard to sew when you can also remove the button first. That's
because this button here can be moved.
Once the position is set, you can sew it in place yourself. Or you can do it like I do. Directly provide the position where it needs to be joined. This way, the front sides will align. You can also secure it with sewing all at once. Be mindful of the position of the sharp corners. Make sure it aligns perfectly with the corner above. The empty section above, where the sewing is to be done, also needs to be sewn. After sewing, the two pieces of fabric will look like this when opened. We approach this piece of material on the rusty cage. Let's measure the visible line. When measuring the visible line, the stitches below are directed to the left. If it looks like this after processing, and then regarding this button, it can be either moved or disassembled first. Next, we will take this piece of material from the other side, directly facing this position. After measuring, also unfold the two pieces of material. The seam at the bottom should face the left side. Measure the thread line above. After measuring, flip it over. Trim the seams of the two positions we just stitched together.
Leave about 2 millimeters.
Be aware if there is a specific side.
Do we have a bag?
If there is a pocket in this position,
you shouldn't cut it too short.
The bag should still leave at least a 5 millimeter seam
Then
allowance.
we will trim the seam of the fabric beside it.
Also leave about 2 millimeters. After trimming, this is how this position looks. Leave a bit more for the bag. Then we are at this marking point
Attach the strap to it.
Be careful when we are sewing here.
The front of the strap and the front of the fabric below are opposite. Just sew along the marker point we made earlier. The buckle here is directly inside.
It can't be taken off. It is secured in place. After handling the straps on both sides, we will buckle it up like this first. You can try and check these front and back sides. Are there any errors with issues like these? If it's like this in the video, then it's fine. Then we take out a piece of this strap.
I put an open ring on this strap.
We need to secure it at the center of this position.
We will mark this center position.
Here we are using the open ring. Place it in the middle of this strap.
Fold both ends together,
about at this folded position. Secure it about 7 millimeters inward. When sewing here, this strap should be underneath.
Then the fabric on top is facing down.
After finishing sewing, the front and back, then take out the last part that needs to be stitched. We will place it face to face with this position. Sew along the edge's curved line. After the car is ready, let's check for any issues. If there are no issues, we'll test the main line on top. When testing the main line,
the airflow below is directed towards the collar.
After processing, this part looks like this. Then we have completely processed this part of the table. Here we place a piece of fabric underneath the top fabric. This fabric is our ceremonial cloth. The top fabric and lining fabric are facing each other.
Then we begin sewing from this position.
The seam from the adjacent piece is approximately 5 sides millimeters away. Then we start sewing from this point to the right angle and place a line. Next, around the collar to this right angle, place another line. Sew to the marked point. For those who don't know how to place the line, we have a separate video on right angle stitching in our tutorial folder. Then the position where the sides are stitched together also needs to be stitching. The front and back style should also be incorporated. I've measured this part. It's just from this marked point all the way over to here.
Then the position on both sides.
Then let's trim the stitched areas.
Then we use slippery edge scissors for the curved areas. If you don't have slippery edge scissors, just use regular scissors
to make
the
bag area.
Don't cut this bag too short. There are no sewn areas.
We'll trim along the edge of the fabric as usual.
Once everything is trimmed, this is what the front and back look like. Then we use straight pliers. Enter from the middle position between the two pieces of fabric.
Go through the shoulder seam here.
Then pinch the front fabric and flip it over. The other side is flipped over in the same way. After flipping it properly, we have pinched this thread inside. The foot position here will be straighter when turned out. Tidy up the edges of the foot a bit. Press it flat. This is how it looks after processing. Then we will unfold the side seams next to the embroidery frame on both sides. Align the front and back directly sew the side seams along the edge. The same operation is done on the other side. When sewing, we focus on this piece near the stitching position. It can be placed on the top layer. This way, it will be easier for us to unfold it when we sew.
Once the sewing is complete,
we will separate this design to both sides. The lining and the outer fabric are joined together. The position of the embroidery hoop is now a complete circle. Then, we use the same method to handle this part on the other side. After both embroidery frames are closed.
Now we fold the bottom edge along the seam line.
This refers to the section both the outer fabric and the lining are folded along the seam line. After folding it well, if our edges need to be sewn with a clear stitch all around, you can just sew a clear stitch. If there are sisters who don't want to sew a clear stitch, sew them together using a long stitch. I've already stitched a clear line all around the edge here. I prefer friends who are more even. You can also stitch a clear line around this embroidery.
but over here,
next, let's work on the pocket section. Regarding the pocket, we'll start by handling this pocket cover. After processing the pocket cover, as explained in the material,
we will stitch the sides together.
You only need to stitch at the position of the red line. When stitching here, if you are close to this folding position, I usually leave one frame empty because if the stitching is too high here,
it's easy to pull the fabric tight here.
After flipping it to the right position of this corner doesn't look good. Leave a 2 to 3 millimeter seam allowance at the stitched areas. At the unstitched areas, we will trim directly along the line. No need to keep any style. Flip it to the front and tidy it up.
Handle it well and put it aside for now.
Then we take out this pocket fabric, fold it in half. The side that is folded in is side facing up because this side of the fabric is somewhat see the stitching position on the back.
If your fabric is invisible,
then mark the position of the thread yourself. Stitch a small section at both the top and bottom
measuring,
positions.
take a look.
The middle section is left unstitched.
Then the two side areas unfold.
Press down on this position in the middle.
From above, it looks like this. Align this middle part to the center a bit.
Then iron it flat. Fold the top position inward toward the reverse side along this design line. Then I approximately retracted a guideline. This line is about 3 millimeters from the edge. Secure the design at this position. Then take out this fabric from the edge of our pocket.
Turn one side of it inside out.
Fold it like this. Along the sewing seam, scratch it with your nails, or you can gently press to create this crease.
Then we will unfold this part first.
At the position of the short edges on both sides. Fold inward along the crease line. It is also folded inward.
Like this edge that remains unfolded.
It needs to be stitched to the fabric of the together. Underneath. First, let's make a comparison.
This top section, you will find
it is indeed shorter than the fabric below. The pocket fabric is shorter by approximately 2 to 3 millimeters.
Then we are at this edge. Make a mark when we retreat to the thickest part later.
This side is aligned. It will also be thicker than the fabric underneath. It should be slightly shorter. It should also be about 2 to 3 millimeters
Make a mark
shorter.
Here as well.
These two marking points.
These are the positions where we start and end the sewing.
Then regarding this side, we are using the pocket fabric and the edge of this pocket. Sew them together with the marked points mentioned earlier. Make sure to align first.
Sew with the uncreased edge of the pocket. The start and end points.
Make sure to fold this position correctly. Move to this right angle position. Turning is difficult. You can use this fabric from the top edge of the pocket. Make 1 or 2 small cuts on this seam. Be careful not to cut into the seam line.
Cut near this seam line.
The position is 1 or 2 millimeters. Then cut this fabric from the edge of the upper pocket. Then turn slightly at the bottom. Continue sewing the side seam vertically.
After measuring, take a look.
This is the starting position. The edges of the pocket are made of fabric. Be shorter. Then we will address the positions that were sewn. Trim the seams slightly. Leave about 2 or 3 right angled positions on both sides of the bottom. You can trim it slightly at an angle for the seam. Then we will turn the pocket inside out. Turn it to the front, flip it over.
This part is like this.
There is a pocket position marked on the drawing. Mark this pocket's position, label it in the same location, up and down like this. Just make a rough mark first. Then we take out the blueprint of the finished pocket. There is a line in the middle of the finished pocket. The position of this line, align the position of the seam we stitched underneath. Align the vertical positions, the 2 reference points we just created.
Then outline the position around it.
Then the edge of our pocket. Isn't it a couple of millimeters shorter than this pocket fabric?
So when we sew it,
the alignment position
should also be a couple of millimeters below its edge. Then we just need to sew according to this position. It's just sewing along the fold we just made. The other side of the pocket's edge. Isn't this long edge already folded?
Just maintain this folded state.
Align it with the marked line below and sew around it like a regular seam. You can't clip at this turning point. While driving, use tweezers to help with the turn a little.
Once the car is ready, it looks like this.
Then we fold this position on both sides. Press the pocket fabric down.
After pressing it down, we sew a few stitches on both sides are the same. Sew 1 or 2 stitches right at the position where I drew. Be careful to back stitch when sewing back and forth. This is what it looks like after sewing. Then take out the pocket cover we prepared earlier. The side of the pocket cover with the opening is aligned with this pocket.
Here, I connect them directly.
There is no gap left in the middle. If you feel that the connection is not very strong, you can place it slightly to the side by 1 or 2 millimeters. The pocket flap will be slightly larger than the pocket. We can simply align it to the center. Sew a line about 1 or 2 millimeters in from the edge of the pocket fabric to secure it.
Looks like this after sewing. Then we fold the pocket flap down like this.
Sew a line at this position. After sewing, it looks like this.
Then sew a button yourself as decoration.
Then we insert the clasps on both sides like this. This part is completed.